Other than Scott and I, what other pastors are on your radar right now? Seriously, I mean,
Yeah.
you're kind of...
Yeah, I'm going to decline that because I would leave somebody out.
Okay.
And there are
So we just assume it's Chris and Scott, and that's it.
Chris and Scott, and
Okay.
that's it. That's it.
Here's one. Probably an unfair question because I doubt you even have one of these, but what does a typical week look like for Rick Warren?
Good question.
Good question. I don't have a typical week. I do know that here is the typical template.
Okay.
The typical template is Monday is my day off. Monday is my Sabbath. I highly believe that if you don't take a Sabbath, you will eventually burn out. So you have to take a day off. God says in the Ten Commandments, every 7 days you take a day off. Saturday and Sunday is not your Sabbath for a pastor. So Monday is my day off. Then what I suggest that you do is rather than scheduling your time, think of your time in blocks of mornings, afternoons, and evenings. And so you have, if you've got 7 days, you got 21 blocks. You got 7 mornings, you got 7 afternoons, and you got 7 evenings. Now you need to understand how you work best. Some people, their thinking process is best in the morning. Other people, they're terrible in the morning, and they need to think in the afternoon. And others are terrible in thinking, and they think best at night. I happen to do my best thinking in the morning. So I like to save the mornings for study. I like to save the mornings for thinking, for writing, for studying, for communication, things like that. I like to use my afternoons for meetings. And for meetings, I don't have to have as much energy because there are other people in the room and things like that. So I like to use that afternoon. For the evenings, one of the rules at our church that has kept the church growing is I require all staff to be at home 4 nights a week. You cannot be out more than 3 nights a week. You are not allowed. If I hear that you've been out more than 3 nights a week, you get in trouble with me. Because I want them at home lasting over the long haul.
You have staffs clapping right now all across America.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I teach also is you could probably cut out half of the meetings in a typical church and it would be healthier. Jesus did not say, I have come that you might have meetings. He said, I came that you might have life.
Right.
And the only way, and where is life lived? At work and at home. And if we keep people so busy at meetings, it's no wonder they don't know their neighbor. It's no wonder they can't have an evangelistic barbecue because we got them at a committee meeting all week. Saddleback grew to 100,000 names on the church roll and 22,000 on a weekend without a single committee meeting in our history. We don't have a single committee in the church. Now, we do have about 300 ministries. What's the difference between a ministry and a committee? Committees discuss what they want other people to do. Ministries just do it. And so we say, okay, you don't have a nursery committee. You have a nursery ministry. That means if you're the nursery ministry, you decide if you need to buy more cribs. And the more you decentralize the authority and the more you decentralize the ownership, the more viral the church becomes, the faster it can grow, and also it's the less likely that a cranky person can control it. You see, if you have a centralized board, you tend to get people who love ego and power plays who want to be on that board. I actually had a guy come to me one time and said, I'm leaving the church. I said, why? He said, because I want to be chairman of the board and you don't have a board. I said, well, I appreciate your honesty, but bye. And he left, and he went and he found a little church where he could be a big fish in a little pond. In our church, nobody does ministry for power, because to have power, you'd have to go join all 300 ministries. There's no centralized committee. So decentralized power means decentralized influence of cranky people, too. And people say, well, how do you control it? I don't. You have to decide whether you want control or growth.
Good, thank you.
Got a question just in. What happens to Saddleback when you're done?
The biggest myth is that you can find a successor to succeed you. The only body I knew who ever did that effectively was Bob Russell, where Dave Stone is now pastor. That was one of the most brilliant handoffs I've ever seen in history. Okay, there are not many places where that handoff really works very well. I mean, he did it, and we're not worthy to him. But I would say, that's all I can say about Bob Russell and Dave Stone, because that was an incredible handoff. There are a few places where that works, but as a general rule, the founder should not choose the replacement, because you will tend to choose the person like you. And what the church usually needs after a founder is somebody who's the exact opposite. Not a clone. They need somebody who's the exact opposite. And the other thing is, you should never, ever be the pastor to follow up a founder. You are the sacrificial lamb. You'll be there 2 years. There will be blood, and then you will leave, and then the real pastor can come.
You just had about 100 pastors faint right now.
I believe that one of the legitimate ministries of denominations is to provide intentional interims. So that I would not want to be the person who follows Bill Hybels. I would not want to be the person who follows me. Or somebody who's had a 30-year ministry, Charles Stanley. Okay, forget it. What you need is Moses is dead. Now you need an intentional Joshua who comes in and simply, he's a lover. And he loves people for 2 years so they can forget me.
That's good. That's good.
And then they forget me, and then the new guy can come in, and they're not always compared, well, Rick did it this way. That's the last thing they need. Now, the second important point is the successor is never really a personality. The successor should be a system. What I'm leaving is a system that will keep the church growing whether I'm there or not. I'm only there half the year right now anyway. 26 a week of the year, I'm overseas helping third world pastors. So I've already weaned the church of me. Okay? I mean, in the last 4 weeks, I haven't preached the last 4 weeks in my church. The whole series after Easter. If you're going to give up a series, you don't want to give up the series after Easter. But I did. And I've got a preaching team that did it, because I believe that people need to hear the Word of God from more than one voice. Especially if they're going to stay there 30 years. I don't want them to have to leave because they're tired of me. I want them to say, I don't care if they like somebody else, Pastor Tom or Pastor Doug or any of my other preaching pastors, but it doesn't bother me as long as you tithe. Okay? Okay? So my ego's not in this. And what I say is, who was the successor to Luther? Nobody. But he left a system. It's called the Lutheran Church. Who was the successor to Calvin? Nobody. But he left the Presbyterian Church. Who was the successor to Wesley? There was no successor to Wesley. But he left a system. It's called the Methodist Church. Now, even today, 100 years later, even the system needs to be renewed. But the successor is a system. And so when Bill Bright died, he left the 4 spiritual laws of Jesus film and the 10 transferable concepts. When Dawson Trotman died, he left the hand and the wheel. When I die, I'm going to leave a system called purpose-driven. People go, oh, bring membership, maturity, ministry, mission. Bring them in, build them up, train them for, send them out. And 38 years. Now what happened?